Well, hello, welcome LA and welcome Vegas. We've got Gary Beers and we've got Toby Rand both from Ashenmoon and always perpetually within from INXS. Welcome to our podcast. We are very pleased to finally get you both on together. We probably, I think, B has probably had numerous chats with yourself, Toby, over the last couple of years and things like that. We just found out prior to going on air that you used to go to high school or grammar school directly across the road from where I'm recording from now, Toby.
I know, mate. You're in Mentone. I'm from Bowie, so we have a lot of like Bowie boys versus Mentone boys. But
Bowie Sharks, huh?
the Bowie Sharks. I played for the Bowie Sharks. There
There
you
you
go.
go.
Don't talk to Gary about Australian rules football.
No, I know. I was about to say Gary's probably getting primed for the Vegas rugby influx. Is that right, Gary?
Oh yeah. As Toby, Toby will recall that I'm always calling either soccer or Australian football the river dance of sport. So I'm a rugby guy all through and through rugby league.
So
So
we better
yeah,
get that out of the way early. You going to Vegas again in a couple of weeks and things?
I'm not actually. It's on what exactly when I'm touring Australia.
Oh, it
So
is too.
Oh,
It is
that
too.
wasn't timed properly, was
they
it?
got their dates wrong. So
But they could have at least communicated that with you, Volandis or whatever there. So, look, you are touring out here. I guess we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to just, I guess, for our listeners, we're an NXS podcast, but we've always over, I guess, 210 episodes delved deep into, both Gary's career and then obviously within Ashenmoon. We've talked about what Andrew's doing, within his sort of country genre at the moment. And we are excited to probably put about at least 75% of this particular episode into Ashenmoon because it is the thing that's relevant now. It is the thing that obviously probably drives motivation, I guess, to get out of bed every day and do what you both are doing. So I guess for some of our listeners, how did it come about? Because I guess around COVID time, a lot of creative things happened. It seemed like there was a similar period of time where Ashenmoon and COVID may have come together in a positive way.
Well, yeah, Toby and I met so LA at a party, and we ended up jamming and getting to know each other. I'd seen him on the Rockstar Supernova couple of screenings or a couple of recordings. I turned up there just to see what was going on, and was pretty impressed by him. And then met him at a party. We jammed and hit it off, and then he started singing in a band that I had at the time called Stadium. And then he and I started talking about writing. So we kind of formed Ashen Moon and started and wrote and produced the whole album ourselves, basically, pretty much the two of us, and recorded at my home studio in Tarzana in California. And then just as we released it and had signed a release deal, COVID hit basically that week. So we had to cancel our tours. We had two tours a year each year canceled. So we kind of just did it ourselves. We did our videos at home. We did the first video for Dustbowl we did downtown LA with no one around, like the first couple of weeks of COVID. So a video that would have cost you $15 million had you done it properly, cost us like $200 and petrol money, basically.
The COVID video, there's no one on the streets and things, is there?
Yeah,
You've got a great, I think, drone going over the iconic parts there.
It
yeah,
was.
Yeah.
It was like Vanilla Sky. It was like
yeah,
Tom Cruise was just lost down there. But like, because Gary looks at it from that perspective, and I had from the different perspective as well when we first met. Because like Gary's been touring the world, and I've I'm a little bit younger than him and stuff, so I knew about INXS being one of my favorite bands and all that kind of stuff. So when we started jamming together and Stadium came about, it was a bit of a hotshot band. I think the first gig we did, we had Terry Nunn, Dave Navarro. We had Kieran up there as well. Kieran was the last singer for INXS, and we had um,
Alan
Randy
White.
Cook on drums. Who else that, Gary?
Alan White from Morrissey.
Alan White from Morrissey, and it was just awesome. We did these incredible like corporate shows where Kieran and I were just like double dual frontmen. But then Kieran went back to Australia, and Gary was kind of like left there a little bit, like, well, I kind of want to continue doing this. So we kind of entrusted each other with the I call it the vaults. We had like all this music that hadn't been used yet, and we just open up some tequila around at Gary's house, and we just go through it all. And that's how a lot of the first songs have come about. And then in this next iteration of Ashen Moon, we're about to release, I think, two more, which came from that as well, which were Gary's ideas from either the late 90s or some of my ideas from like the mid 2010 or something like that. So that we just kind of found a home for them, which is awesome.
And I think that EP, I mean, the four tracks that came out on the sort of the Umbra one or Umbra I. How do you pronounce it? What's the
Umbra One.
Umbra one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the four songs you had on that. I mean, I think they were such a fantastic sort of embodiment of what the band sort of probably was, and sonically, obviously massive departure from INXS, but it was just great hearing sort of compared to these days. Traditional sort of guitar parts, great vocals, great melodies, great songcraft, and I guess EPs are a great way of introducing an act to an audience where everyone's attention spans these days are a lot less than the double live album from live at Budokan.
I mean, we have thoughts on that, don't we, Gary?
Yeah, exactly. We know what we're doing. We've especially me, I guess, I've owned studios. I've basically grown up recording and producing in studios. So we were pretty comfortable doing what we were doing. And as Toby was saying, the musicians that we had at our disposal were just second to none. So yeah, the product turned out great. I mean, the music really speaks for itself, I think.
You seem a lot more rockier than INXS, as more of the sort of like the I would say the welcome to wherever you are sort of movement. Is that something that you sort of push for, Gary, more than the other side?
Well, I've always been more of the rocker out of INXS. I mean, I've always been the guy that was more into Zeppelin and Deep Purple and than the other guys. So yeah, when it came to having our own music, it was pretty much a given that would be a fair bit of Zeppelin and Jeff Buckley. And a lot of the stuff, as Toby said, was already recorded that that I'd started back in, I think God Tank I started in 1998. And so, it's stuff that goes back to really when I was really starting to sort of question myself as a songwriter. And through to now when I've met Toby, and Toby's my songwriting partner, and it's a really strong belief in what we're doing together.
And you were able to snare someone from Jeff Buckley's production team to come and work on one of those tracks, I think. Is that right?
We did. Just
I don't know, because we had different mixes on some of the songs. I know that we had Dave Reitzes.
You might have been that, yeah.
Dave Reitzes, and he worked he worked where Michael Jackson did like Dangerous, and he did Barbra Streisand's vocals for like 15 years or something. Gary, was it more than that?
Yeah, he's her personal recorder. So he mixed Whitney Houston. He's like when we were working with him, he won 2 Grammys while we were in the studio mixing. So
wow,
I'm sure he's won more since then. He's won like 7 or 8 Grammys. So he's a lovely bloke too. So yeah, we had a pretty good team of people, and still do.
It was awesome for me as well, because I was like working with someone like who worked with these iconic female singers, and he was able to kind of get that a bit more of a range out of me, which was really cool too. So I kind of like working with guys that have worked with females, because it kind of stretches your limits a little bit and makes you a little bit softer in certain areas, and because I've already got the grit, so that was really interesting for me.
You are from Melbourne, so
I think that's 1-1. You've already had to go at Gary's age. And, you've had to go at Toby being a Mexican, I guess. I guess, B, did you want to extend on that question at all, or furtherly?
Yeah. So, when you come over next month, which is in March, will there be any new songs?
Yeah, there will be actually. Yeah.
So, is it going to be a new album as well coming out?
Gary and I. Well, I mean, we've had talks about this. Like the EP thing is all well and good, but let's face it, no one's going to be buying CDs really anymore. So, I think ideally we'd love to put out a vinyl. So we could stack the vinyl with Umbra 1, and then all the new releases that we're doing. So that we're going to do. I think you're going to hear in the show two new tracks that literally I think Gary was working on today. Some of the stuff today, and I have to do some vocals next week. And we've hired the gun Jimmy Barnes' son. He's already recorded on we're going to release a cover from one of Gary's favorite bands as well, which is amazing. So you'll hear 3 songs. which we're really excited about. So, and the whole idea is probably mid year, maybe later in the year, just do a whole compilation of 13 songs. So we'll release probably 4 or 5, but before the end of the year as well.
A track that I'd love you to, share a little bit about that. I guess, in the early days when I sort of delved deep on some of the material, Future King and Queens. I think that's just an amazing song. It's sonically, it has a little bit of afterglow in excess in the song structure to it, but it's not any way at all a hybrid at all. But I just felt sonically it was a little bit similar. But I think vocally, it's one of your best vocal performances, Toby, and I think one you can be very proud of.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I think we tried to level the EP with a little bit of the anthemic rock, because I did come from that kind of upbringing as well, like the big anthem rock. I loved listening to, obviously INXS back in the day, and then Garry might wince at me, but I loved U2, and they were the big anthemic rock, when I was growing up, and so that Future Kings and Queens to me is kind of like a hybrid of what Garry and I both like, but with the influence of, say, like you mentioned, the Afterglow, and with the influence of like One by U2, like that chord progression, the A minor and the big lift. And so, and the one good thing that I love working with Garry, and a lot of the time that I don't need to work with anyone else, is because Garry is very good at, he knows my voice now, he knows where I can go. So we'll have a lot of sessions where we just fuck around until, the wee hours, to get those magic moments that sometimes come through. So, so Garry's beat was really instrumental in producing my vocals a lot of the time as well.
Well, I think it's not just that he's a great singer, but I really enjoy what he has to say as well. Like, lyrics to me are a very important part of a song, always have been. So, and that piece of music, again, I wrote that and it was accepted on INXS's last album, Switch, but we ran out of time. We only had 2 weeks to write and record, or to record and deliver an album. So that was the final song. We never got to actually finish it off. And Toby heard the music and just disappeared for a while and came back with Future Kings and Queens. And I think it's the vocal performance is inspired. I mean, I think he really wanted to say something in that song, and he really did.
With you mentioned Switch there, Perfect Strangers was a track that became quite a prominent hit from the album and got a lot of radio airplay. Did you feel towards the end of INXS's recording career, you got a sort of a second life where you had a bit to say, Garry, and you were getting quite prolific with what you were doing at Mangrove, and wanting to sort of write more and produce more material?
Yeah, I mean, for the writing session for that record, Andrew and I, were the only ones that were sort of brought out to LA to meet with all the songwriters, and did Perfect Strangers and Brighter Future and probably 5 or 6 other songs while I was out here. And as I said, I would have had 2 songs on the record, which is pretty unheard of for me, but time didn't allow that. But it's, and some of the songs like Stargaze and God Tank, and I've been sitting around because I just couldn't get a Guernsey back in the days. So it definitely felt like I was getting more accepted and respected as a writer towards the end there with INXS. So it was well timed to meet, to really sit down with Toby and open those floodgates again, because I love music and I love writing and I love playing. So it's
we sense that when we interviewed you over a year ago, and a song like God Tank's probably one of the newest tracks, I guess, that's come about. That has some origins back in the 90s, doesn't it?
Yeah, I wrote that. That was the first thing I wrote about, I don't know, probably almost a year after Michael passed. I mean, I just couldn't bring myself to go back in the studio, and I finally went in there and picked up a guitar and wrote the riff, and then just did a drop tune thing and just recorded pretty much exactly what you hear. Bed guitars is what I recorded that day. So, and then the arrangement and everything, and then just sat on it, and then it's had a few other attempts to get it out over the years, but I'd given up on it, and Toby heard it and went, let's open her up. So I have all the tracks still in my studio. So we opened it up and it just became a God Tank.
And lyrics wise, is that both of you or mainly Toby?
Just the lyrics to God Tank are Toby, but the title is mine, because that's what the original piece of music was called, God Tank. So Toby wrote.
But I would always check in with Garry and say, does this symbolize, kind of some of the thought that's going into it. So he'd always like sign off on the lyrics as well. Like, it's very much a duo when it comes to like us signing off on things. Like, Garry will work on music and he'll send it to me and he'll be like, "What do you think?" And I'll be honest and I can just say, "Listen, I don't think that." And then we'll have a normal discussion about it, which is good because normally when there's 5 people in the room, the discussions get a little bit more aggressive. But with 2 people, it's a lot more easier to come to a conclusion or a assimilation. And then with the addition of our new guitarist Yohai, because we were listening to God Tank just before we released it, was it 8 months ago or 6 months ago, and we just realized the chorus wasn't popping, and so we brought our guitarist in and we said, "Hey mate, what are some of the things that inspire you?" And so that jangly guitar in the chorus was something that all 3 of us were like, "Okay, this is what it needs," and then that elevated to another level again. So from that one riff, we were so passionate about what Garry had started that it's gone through all these iterations, and now we finally trust the end result. So yeah, it's good.
So it's interesting you mentioned your guitarist, etc. there. Obviously, when you play a live show, you may fill out the sound by having a couple of extra players come along. Who is the band as of today? I know controversially, we probably had to have one of our recent members move on to other pastures, and Garry was quite articulate in explaining how that all played out, I think, on Facebook recently. But who's the band at the moment, and what's going to be the lineup, obviously, live next month?
Well, as Toby mentioned, we got Jackie Barnes is going to be joining the band for the Australian tour and hopefully beyond. He's turned out to be I know, an amazing player, and I'm looking forward to playing with him. But a true gentleman and a true pro. But as Toby mentioned, Yohai Portal is our guitar player now, and he's proved to be invaluable, and he's really become a third member, alongside Toby and myself, and he's really adept in the studio. He's an amazing guitar player, lovely bloke, and so it'll be the 4 of us.
Where did you find him?
He's in LA. He played in a couple of bands with one of the previous members of Ashenmoon, and we just bonded from the first time we started playing with him. So we played one show before COVID completely shut us down, was when Yohai first joined, and we did a show in Texas to like 10,000 people with Berlin. So we got the taste of it back then, and then everything, all our tours got cancelled because of COVID, which is, happens. But so here we are, kickstarting it again.
Yeah, and this band is a bit of a remote band as well because of obviously the trials and tribulations of being together through COVID and then trying to work on music. So we don't want to get used to it, but a lot of like Yohai's endeavor and the way that he commits to like doing remote work, like he's very good at mixing and putting things together and guitar work and stuff like that, where then I can record vocals at home and ideas, and then Garry can take it to his studio. So we've become that kind of remote band. And then when we finally get together, it's actually such a treat. And so I think that when rehearsals start in Brisbane, the boys are getting in there on February are you getting there March the 2nd or something like that? Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, and they're going to do we do three lockout days of rehearsals. It's going to be the first time that the 4 of us is going to be in the room together. So as a full band, and like I said before, Jackie Barnes has already put his hand up and recorded 1 track, and we're going to ask him to do a couple more. And he has a visa to America, so that's very exciting as well. So and he said that he's open for more work as well. So we're just moving forward with the 4 of us at this stage.
Now, is that Jimmy's son? Is that right, Garry?
Yeah, it is. And how ironic is it that I got a note yesterday that our greatest hits is number 1 again in Australia.
And then number 2.
number 2 is Chisel.
Yeah.
So good timing.
Great.
So,
yeah.
This is funny because I've known Jackie since he was inside his mum. I mean, he was born. So
it's bizarre. You probably were on the Australian Made tour, walking past the bassinet, and not realizing that 39 years later.
Yeah, here you are.
Yeah, the Barnes family are a real family, and anyone who's friends with them really feel part of the family. So it's really a wonderful full circle to have Jackie in the band.
Jimmy's just recovering from another hip operation, isn't he?
Yeah. Jimmy's been in the wars. He's a bit of like our version of Keith Richards, though. He won't back down,
He is. he would outdrink any one of us. That's for sure. I think so.
Look, in and out rather fast. I think it's really between March the 5th and the 8th. Now, I think we've got Brisbane, Melbourne, Newtown, and was Coolangatta changed at all, or is that still happening?
Our agent, I think it was more of an accident, just put it in there to fill the gaps, but it's not really a destination that any of us really agreed on, so we just removed it.
Okay.
We can let you know that on Sunday we're actually doing a special meet and greet show in Sydney on the 9th, which is going to be awesome, and that's we have Young Henry's Beer come on board for that, and they are going to be sponsoring a get-together on Sunday at a famous hotel rooftop in Sydney, which is going to be awesome. So we're going to do an afternoon session, which we're going to announce very, very soon, and people can come down and the theme is come and have a beer with beers kind of thing. So
or a few beers.
Beers with beers, and so we'll be up there with acoustic guitars and then they're going to have a couple of kegs of Young Henrys, and we're going to pour beers with everyone, have a chat, and Garry can talk about his legacy, and I can talk about how I'm just like enjoying to be back in Australia drinking all the beers. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
And
Fantastic.
as far as the shows go too, it's the first time I've been back playing in Australia for 12 years. So I guess with our schedules, we're looking to get back, show what we can do, and then really look towards doing a lot more shows later in the year.
But, Australia's like, guys, unless you're out there playing live in front of people, and INXS went through this as well, people forget you sometimes, don't they? And, probably you would have played here a lot earlier if COVID and all those other things hadn't transpired as the way they did.
Our lives over here as well, and to get a moving vessel down there in Australia, it's not that easy from America these days. But we're basically showing intention by cutting our teeth back in Australia and showing our agency that we are ready to take on anything that they want later in the year. Our dream is to get on some of the festivals later in the year. You know what I mean? And introduction. Say hello, get some press, and see what we can transpire from that.
Fantastic, and thank you for coming on our show and letting us celebrate that for you as well. So the itching question is: are any of the other INXS members going to come up on stage or be at the concerts?
I don't know if it'll be at the. I haven't really brought it up with them. I mean, to be honest, I don't expect anyone to get up on stage. I don't know. It would be nice, but I haven't discussed it with anybody, or I think I'm just really looking at Ashenmoon as its own entity, and it's Toby. It's Toby and myself. That's the we are Ashenmoon and I think we'll throw in some INXS songs that we feel attached to, ones that I've written the music for or what have you. But overall, I think we just really want to show what Ashenmoon can do.
And how many tracks do you envisage playing live overall? Is it most of the material you've done so far, plus obviously some INXS tracks? Is it sort of a 15, 17 song show, or
it's about
fractionally less?
I think it's about 14 or 15 songs. I think it goes for about 70 odd minutes or so, which is a little different to what I do out here in Vegas. Vegas is like 100,000 songs in one night, but it's good. It's like Garry said, we're only going to lean on songs that have something personal to us with INXS, because INXS was one of my favorite bands too. And the track, some of the tracks that Garry worked on are some of my favorites as well. So we'll add a couple of those little tasty things in there, and then obviously the new cover that we just finished recording, which we're going to put out at the same time we come to Australia, is going to be awesome as well. So
are we allowed to know the name of that one?
I think we could probably, maybe next week. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
But this will be going out next week, so you can tell us.
Well, why not? Yeah. No, it's a Joy Division song that. But we put a little twist on at the end, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
Fantastic.
Okay. Excellent.
I've got a few questions from our patrons, our gorgeous patrons. One being Sula, and I've got a few here for Toby. Toby, the book Sex Tips from Rock Stars, which I do not know about, is probably extremely racy. How did you get involved in that book, and does your mother know about it? You've got to tell us about this now.
Okay. Yeah, so this was a a buddy of mine, Paul Miles, and he wrote some of the. Do you know Paul Miles, Hayden? He's a Melbourne guy. He's a rock biographer. So he followed Motley Crue around over the years. He did a biography on John Corabi, and then he did this book where he went around and asked like 80 rock stars. I think it was in 2008 or something like that.
Wow.
If they would just answer some questions about sex tips and things like that. And all of my tips came from Tommy Lee. So,
Right.
so basically everything that I'm quoted on is basically just me regurgitating being on Tommy Lee for 2
The
years.
Mount Rushmore of tips, I assume,
Oh, mate, it was, yeah. So, and I remember having a girlfriend at the time who knew about the book, and she's like, she got all like weird about it, and I'm like, honestly, it was just tongue in cheek, just fodder. But there was some like this. If you find it, there's some old school like rockers in there who say some cool stuff, but it's just a bit of fun. Yeah, sorry
How
about
old's the book then? Is it still in publication?
that. I don't know. I hope not. I'm just,
Was a bit of fun.
I'm deferring
Now to
everything
get
to Mr. Lee. That's all I'm going to say. So
to
yeah.
get you off the hook, Toby, tell us me what you do in Vegas as is it a side hustle or a companion sort of gig that you have separate to Ashenmoon?
Yeah, I have a corporate band in Vegas, and we have a residency at the Cosmo, and that's kind of like the main income earner that over here that I would work with, and we get to tour the country, we get to do Mexico, the Caribbean, and do like high-end corporate events. And it's got actually got an Australian guy, the guitarist from Savage Garden, is in it, which is a friend of Gary's as well, and he bought a bass off Gary a few months ago, and he so we got Ben Carey on guitar, and Ben grew up in Melbourne as well, playing rock and roll. His favorite band is Electric Mary. We have Bryce Soderberg on bass, who was from Lifehouse, and then we had Chris Reeve on drum originally, who was from Filter, Aussie drummer, but now we have a local guy, Al, and yeah, it's a great gig for me. It keeps me moving, and Gary comes out and joins us every now and again for shows as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
And the material, I guess, is it a case of just a blend of influential material that you all enjoy playing?
Yeah, just high-end rock and roll, mate. We mash up the stupidest things. We mash up like Eminem with David Bowie, and just all kinds of weird stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you put a lot of it out onto your socials, don't you? I love watching them. You've got quite a following, really, a big crowd of mainly women.
The highlight for me of the show is when Toby and Bryce sing Total Eclipse of the Heart together. That's absolute magic.
Is the tongue firmly in the cheek? Is it?
Yeah,
I don't know. Bryce is pretty serious about it, but it's brilliant.
We do a little bit of stage performing, because I did a little stint with a Broadway show, so I've got a bit of affiliation for the theatrics. So I kind of enjoy all the bullshit and a bit of the fun. So it's nice.
I'm really excited about this show. I'm going up to see you at Lefty's, definitely, and now I'm really got a taste for having a beer with beers.
All right, awesome. That's awesome. Whereabouts are you both? So where are you based, B?
I'm in Coffs Harbour, so I'm right in the middle of Brisbane and Sydney. 6 hours away from both, but still I can get there. So pretty good.
Just
I've already
vocally,
taken the weekend off, so that's good.
just vocally, Toby, I'm sort of, keen just as a bit of a music nerd, and I'm sure some of our listeners are. How do you sort of hone and just keep the voice, as pristine as it can? I guess there's obviously exercises. I remember reading an interview with Lenny Kravitz when he was producing Mick Jagger's album, and he said that, Mick was downstairs doing vocal sort of warm-ups for an hour every morning and all this sort of stuff, and he realized just how long he could, why his career lasted or has lasted so long because of the commitment. Tell us about how, you retain just the vocal strength and things.
Yeah, so like as growing up in Australia, like we were used to just having really shitty foldbacks, so you have to scream over the drums, and my voice was always had to be really loud. So I'm a loud singer already, but as soon as I started like touring with the big boys, I remember when we did the big tour with Slash and the Conspirators, and Miles Kennedy was the lead singer, and I remember I had like a 20-minute routine that I'd do, like a warm up from one of my singing teachers that I'd kept in my phone, and drink my teas and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd hear Miles down the corridor in his room doing an hour of just like power scales. And I asked him the next night to take me into the room and just show me what he was up to. So I kind of learned a lot from Miles. He's a very clean singer, very much doesn't like to drink or anything like that. So that was a bit of a shift as well, because the Aussie culture is like, let's have a few beers and go on. And then when I did a lot of the Broadway stuff, I got to work with some sopranos and tenors, and they showed me tricks of breathing. And then we shared like and I showed them a little bit how to do my rock and roll thing, because they had to like learn how to be rock and roll on stage and move around more, and I had to learn how to be stoic and more full of guttural and all that kind of stuff. So I'm being fortunate to work with incredible singers. And then there's a little oil of oregano is my secret tip. So it's like a little oil, and you put it in salads or like whatever. You put it in the back of your throat. It burns like shit, but it just lubricates. Lovely. And I try and warm up every day. I always do half an hour before a show, and then that's just kind of, and not just staying healthy, mate. I don't get drunk before a gig or anything like that. Just try and stay as healthy as I can.
Those days are gone, and those are the secret drops that Michael gave to Kylie, hey?
I was going to say, as they should.
Well, Miles Kennedy, you mentioned, is a great singer, and it's just interesting. There's some singers who, just that they shoot their voice out, like it just goes at a certain time, and some artists, and again, like Elton John's last tour, like his voice just wasn't what it was, from many years ago, but he'd been doing it that often. But someone like John Stevens, who's still obviously touring Australia at the moment, Garry, playing both Noiseworks and INXS material. Left, right, and centre. I mean, his voice still sounds fantastic. I saw him play with Noiseworks last year, but still got those great sort of Scottish, Kiwi, Maori, vocal tones, that go way back.
I think if you find that, what I've seen anyway, I think a lot of singers, as they get very old, their voices start sounding a little bit more feeble. And I think that's the big change for most people. But I mean, a good singer, if they look after their voices, they can sing. They should be able to sing forever.
Yeah.
The only difference is that when Axl Rose writes, his Appetite for Destruction when he's 18, there's no way he can sing it when he's 64. There's just no way. Like, it's just so high. Like, Brian Johnson, I don't know how the hell he even manages to do 2 nights in a row, So, but the key is to not write songs that high.
Just a little interesting anecdote. Do you remember, Garry, the song Unpublished Critics from Australian Crawl?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually Sweet Child of Mine, 5 years before Sweet Child of Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I guess they say there's only so many chord progressions and notes and things out there. How do you sort of sometimes create music and sometimes go, geez, has this been played before? Have I heard this somewhere subliminally? I mean, it must be hard to think, have I found something original, or is it something I've borrowed subliminally in my sleep or whatever?
It is hard because, obviously, I'm a little bit older than Toby. So, my listening to music career goes back to, the height of, to me, the height of music back in the 70s so I've grown up with so much great music that it's all in the databanks in my head. So it is sometimes hard to not go, I don't think anything's original. I mean, I'm sure it's all in your brain from somewhere, but you've got to, there's only so many notes and so many words and so many ways of doing things. So it's got to, I just call it being influenced. You're not ripping off anybody unless you do it purposely. But you're just being influenced by people, and I think it's a sign of flattery when you put some form of song that moved you or helped shape your musical career back in some way back into a song. I mean, nothing I play bass playing wise is original. It's just an amalgam of all the great players that I grew up with and idolized, and not even to a point where I studied them. I just was too busy doing my own stuff with INXS to sit down and really work out how John Paul Jones played his bass style, or even McCartney. So, but I know the attitude that they took to their songs. So it's more the attitude to me.
You must be getting some new things out of your new guitars, though, some new tunes.
Yeah, I can't really put them down. For those who don't know, I build my own custom bass guitars called GGB basses, and the pickup it's a patented pickup that can give you 5 different bass sounds out of one pickup. Out of this one little guy here, give you 5 different bass sounds. So it's the only bass that you'll need, and I'm really feeling inspired by it. I mean, it gives me tones that I don't usually use. Usually, I just pick up and get the Gary Beers tone, but now I can get a whole bunch of different different tones that tend to push me in different directions. So yeah, I've kind of used my technical skills to use to jump all over my history of bass sort of brain power to build something that really to me is just helping keep me inspired about playing bass.
Will you be bringing some over to sell?
There's some over there at the moment. Yeah, I took 3 over when I was over in Australia last time. So I think Steve Dolby's out there with one right now,
Ah,
and I know Nick from Crowded House got one. So yeah, they're out and about. And I know that at the moment the guys from Nashville, all the Nashville players, I've sold like 5 to the Nashville players in the last 3 or 4 months, and they they love the fact that they can get all those different sounds, starting with a good old fashioned Fender bass sound. Like that's the core of everything. That's the core of what I play. So they just love the fact that they can go in and do sessions all day long with one bass and get different sounds. So they're going crazy over it.
Yeah. So do you find like from a week to week level, if we structured a week in the life of Gary Beers outside family commitments, do you find obviously there's a part of your week with Ashenmoon, part of your week with the bass business, or you generally have a mix up of the two over the month?
It's a mashup every day, to be honest. I mean,
Mm.
Toby's a bit of a not a tyrant, but he's really driven as far as helping motivate me as far in doing everything I can for whatever I'm doing. Toby's a very motivated guy, and I can be more of just a bass player. And also, I've got teenage kids now here. I've got the new business. I'm a great bass player. I'm a great designer and builder. Not much of a businessman, so I'm teaching myself all that stuff as I go along because it's all me.
Mm.
It's a one man band, so to speak. So that takes a lot of my time. But I'm getting there, and I think as far as and Asher Moon deserves more time than I've got, but I need to devote more my time better towards it because it's a real passion project.
All right, maybe we will turn over the vinyl, the A side. We're going to the B side now, and we might just open up the INXS canon if that's okay. And just mention a couple of little things. Probably aware, Gary, that Listen Like Thieves is getting a reissue this year, 40th anniversary. Tell us your thoughts.
It was a very important album in our career. I mean, we done Shabu Shabar with Mark Opitz. It opened the doors to in America. And Listen Like These came out, and we were told to write a hit in the last couple of days. And that Andrew and Michael went off and wrote What You Need. We recorded it live in one day, and there's our hit. There's our top 5 in America. It got a lot of attention around Europe, and that's what really started the ball rolling that album. I think for Australia, it was like with the videos especially, it was like the perfect sort of summer Australian album. With Kiss the Dirt and Listen Like Thieves and This Time and Shine Like It Does. It just felt really right for what we're doing in Australia. So for us, it was a very important album. And I wrote the music for the song Listen Like Thieves, and Andrew helped me arrange it, and Michael put the lyrics and vocals on it. So it's a very important album for me as a songwriter too. So it's great. And I don't know if you've read the press release. We discovered a live recording of us in that period at Royal Albert Hall, which we didn't know existed, and it's brilliant. I mean, Michael's singing his heart out. The band's really playing well, and it's just funny because Royal Albert Hall sounds like shit to a band. It's round,
Mm.
it just doesn't sound good. Like, and you'd never think you've done a great gig, but when you hear the recording, you go, "Wow, that," because you kind of forget about it
yeah.
because it's just it's not made for rock and roll.
Yeah. Well, there's some great footage of you and Michael at the Royal Albert Hall, and you're goofing around on stage. There's a little bit of that around.
And even in the change rooms, I think is there the warm up with the Nile Rodgers sort of
Mm,
song that
that's right.
Michael used to like warming up with.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. God, what's that? No, Yum Cha or something like that.
Ah,
Oh,
yummy, yummy.
Yummy.
yeah,
Well,
Poontang.
that was when I first saw you, Gary, on stage that week because I saw you at the Birmingham Odeon. I think it was either like the couple of days before the Royal Albert Hall or after. I never know which way it is. But yeah, I went to see you on that tour. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good too. The whole Listen Like Thieves tour was amazing because we were crossing over from big theaters to small arenas, and the band was really playing well.
And your tour clothes got stolen at one point.
Yeah, had them stolen a couple of times. I mean, you're a sweaty mess. You take you get changed, you leave them laying around, and all of a sudden they're gone. I mean, it's some people just can't resist themselves. But yeah, it's an occupational hazard. That's why I guess a lot of musicians just live in their clothes 24/7.
Yeah. Now, with the INXS side of things, obviously that's going to be a big thing coming out in May, and I think there's quite a lot of work going in with Giles Martin, I guess, in through all these Dolby Atmos sort of reproductions and things like that, and I guess management and through the arrangements they have with Giles, he's sort of got a license to go back through a lot of the old material. How much sort of involvement do you have with INXS management and catch ups and not so much band directives because the band obviously is in a sort of what you would call, a heritage situation where it's, Chris's motivation was band to brand. And, I guess the band as itself now is about celebrating its past and its achievements. But how much sort of involvement do you have with management these days? Or is it sort of something out of sight, out of mind being in LA?
No, we have total involvement. I mean, Sam Evans has been working with INXS. Sam was, basically Chris's protege back in, gosh, late 80s, early 90s. So she's been with us forever. And she really took over after we lost Chris a few years ago. So, and she's been amazing. And she's kind of more into getting the band's input than Chris was. Chris, obviously genius, but kept his cards close to his chest. Sam really enjoys getting all our input. So we're on like chain threads every day, talking about projects, about this and that. And it's like the band's kind of never been more involved than now, as far as looking after our legacy in many ways. So which is quite exciting. I mean, because it's a good legacy.
Yeah.
But there's more to come.
Well, yeah, we're just catching up on re-releasing our albums, and next one's Kick, the biggest one, which is ironic because it's that was our sixth album. So who these days you don't get 6 seconds of fame, let alone everyone waiting until you got your sixth album together to have a massive hit around the world. So
What about Elegantly Wasted? We hear that there's a lot of songs that are still in the vault there that Chris did say that he was going to release. Do you know anything about that?
well, everything's gone. We're in a pretty lucky position that we hoard all our master tracks, all our all the.
Why are
we
you
own
doing that? Keep
So
it.
we've got a storage facility in Sydney. We've shipped all our main collection of album recordings. They're heading, if they're not there already, into Abbey Road vaults, and that's where Giles Martin is based out of. So, and Giles we've known since he was, I think, 16, when we worked with George Martin in Osaka in Japan, and he was tagging along being his dad's assistant, and that's where we really befriended Giles. And now Giles is winning Grammys and a major part of our career as well. So it couldn't be we couldn't be more happily involved with the producers than we are now. I mean, and he has full has the keys to the vault, so to speak, as far as all the tapes. So we're still we're turning up. We turned up a live concert we didn't know about. I'm sure they'll be turning up a lot of other stuff like you're talking about with Elegantly Wasted, because I know that was Bruce Fairburn produced that. I'm sure that he had a funny way of recording that. I'm sure there are tapes around that we didn't know, that we'll discover as we go into the vaults.
We were fortunate enough to interview, I think, Mike Plontakoff, his engineer, about 2 years ago, which was a fantastic deep dive. Obviously, Bruce, unfortunately, no longer with us, but he shared some fantastic photos and just some insights of the recording up in Canada, which was probably a unique recording experience getting away out of Australia to do so.
Bruce, like, amazing producer, but he didn't like the bands like being in the room together. Like you did your part, then you left, and you had to sit and listen to it in the living room. So a lot of it was not fun.
Right.
So we tried to like just record it all live as a band as much as we could, because otherwise you're banished. Well, so and so does his part, and it's kind of a bummer because we used to we like being involved. We've been together since we were in high school as kids, so it's kind of strange to be shut out while someone's doing their part.
I hope you're going to play an Elegantly Wasted song when we go to see you.
It was probably a lot different to Chris Thomas, I guess, and his way of recording, Garry.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Chris was really about having everyone in the room. Like Chris knew his powers. I mean, Chris was like one of the greatest producers ever. I mean, when and it wasn't even that the Sex Pistols or the White Album or stuff, the stuff that he was more famous for, mixing Dark Side of the Moon. It was the early stuff with Roxy Music that sold in excess on him, because we used to do Roxy Music covers like from their first 3 or 4 albums that he did, and just that huge rhythm section sound that he got that's what I was a fan of.
Hmm.
So and Chris really, he's a real songwriter too. Like that's the thing is, there's some producers that are amazing producers at sound, but producers that are like George Martin that are sound and songs they're golden. You just can't. They know not to be second guessed.
Well, for all
Whatever they say, really take notice of.
for all the anarchy on Nevermind the Bollocks, it's well produced, isn't it?
It's amazing. It is. It's that wall of guitar
Yeah.
and the bass. That's all Steve Jones. He's playing all the guitars and bass. So it's basically just him and the drummer.
Yeah. Now, Toby, being a great front man and things like that, I'm sure you've been influenced over the years. Did you ever get a chance to see Michael, Hutchence with INXS play live, or it wasn't something that you were able to get to?
I think I was in the audience when I was little, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Brothers did. I've got two older brothers, and they were in a rock and roll band in Beaumaris. They played at the Bowie Hotel in
Right.
in the 90s or whatever it was.
Yep.
Which by memory, I think that all the Aussie bands used to tour through. I think INXS used to play through there in Cold Chisel back in the runs in the 80s. I think it was. Yeah, and I never got to see him, but obviously he's always been one of my favorites. And then from that era of the 80s, and then when the 90s came around, I was more influenced by the Chris Cornells and the Scott Whalens and things like that. So I was kind of lucky to have well, I guess I wasn't that lucky because I didn't get the 70s influence as much, but it wasn't bad to have that grunge with the 80s influence with those, because it went from being like the hair metal, lollipop rock to suicide rock grunge, like holy shit. It's like
it's like overnight, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then
Mm.
from obviously the 70s being all the hair flares to the neon lights and roller skates, it's just wild, like the transition.
Lived through a bit, haven't we, Garry?
Totally giving away our stage show. This is cool.
One of the things we talked about, and look, again, probably Gary would be too humble, but we ran an episode which we do every few months, every probably 6 months, on the Rock Hall of Fame, and it seems like the powers that be didn't quite get their ducks aligned in nominating INXS this year, but we do think it will happen. We know it will happen. We want it to happen, but as the general sort of rock and roll, philosophy now, I feel like rock music needs to have another revolution in some respect. I feel like some of the other acts and styles of music seem to be front and center, and they're not always as organic and not always as natural. What can rock music do to sort of make itself more culturally, impactful going forward? Because, it doesn't feel like the record companies support the bands like they did probably, in your origin days, Garry.
I think you got it in one. I think it's just support. I think the bands are out there trying. There's some great bands out there. We're just one of them, like Ashenmoon. But we're doing it ourselves. We haven't got a label, and I think that's what's missing, is that people just go for where they think the quick buck is in the industry, and they just go for established forms of music that that just is obviously simple to make and reaps more money. So and there's no real artist development anymore. That's the thing, is that and as Toby will attest to, there's really nowhere to play. I mean, that's the thing, is that we're trying, Toby and I are trying, in my area in Orange County, I'm trying to get venues going. Toby's working with that wherever he is as well. There's just nowhere to play.
Yeah, it doesn't really support doing like, a gig every week or something like that, like you used to. You used to be able to do a gig a week. You'd have all your buddies. I'll support you this week. We'll support you. And unless you're creating a movement from Britain, which seems to be the British invasion thing, because I'm looking at bands like the Idols, that British kind of punk band. They're creating a movement because there's stage shows and they're singing about the king should be dead. They're thinking, but what about the rock bands who just want to sing, just like, anthems and great rock and roll? The room is a little bit smaller,
Mm.
So, and we're not really creating a movement. We're just wanting to play like good rock and roll. The venues are kind of drying up, unfortunately, particularly over here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, there's plenty over here though.
All
Well,
right, we've
maybe
back
not as
then.
many as they used to be, but I feel like the most evil word in sort of entertainment these days is algorithm. That applies to Netflix. I think it applies to music. I feel like there's these. Well, I think Frank Zappa said it very well. Says back in my day, I'd sit in a room, there'd be some old guy, cigar chomping guy in his 50s, and saying, I don't know, let's just put it out and let's see how it goes. And then he'd say, these days there's some corporate guy sitting there, with his algorithm, and he preferred the old cigar chomping guys who didn't have any idea. Let's just put it out, and you, I think Gary probably suggests that INXS had 4, 5, 6 albums to get it right. I think REM, The Cure, U2, you all had sort of sophomore,
Yeah, but they worked
breeding
hard
grounds,
as well.
apprenticeships that allowed you to get it right.
Exactly. What's number 1 and number 2 in Australia right now?
Yeah, on the album chart. What's that saying to everybody though? That where are the guitars?
It's true. I mean, the thing is, everyone's still playing guitar. I mean, I just did NAMM here in California. I was showing my basses in NAMM, and everyone's playing guitar. But it's just, I guess, it's just a matter of they all sound like they're playing in their mum's basement and not playing with someone else. That's the thing. They can all play their asses off, but they don't know when to play with somebody. And that's what comes back to being able to play venues, because there might be places to play, but not like when I was young. I mean, we played, Toby was saying once a week, we played every night.
Yeah.
Every single night of the week we played. Yeah, and there was nothing else but just playing every night, and it was great. Then you drive down to Melbourne, the Deadly Human, you play every night down in Melbourne. Maybe sometimes two, maybe do a university and then a pub that night. I mean, that's what it was. That's how bands got good and how they got recognized and how they got a following. There's your algorithm. You already had a bit of a following.
Yeah, it was that ground level live support, and obviously live was almost more important than the album side, wasn't it? Really, in those days.
Totally, yeah. And the thing is, bands can play these days. There's some great bands out there, as Toby was saying, but it's just a matter of people getting behind them and giving them the push that they need. I mean, there's no reason Ashenmoon shouldn't be as popular as some of these other bands, but we're just doing it ourselves and just taking it as we can. And also I guess at our age we can't just go out and bash ourselves into the ground just trying to play every open door we can. But I think we'll get there. I think our music will finally win people over.
Well, I think coming out here doing this little mini tour, maybe getting some press, people suddenly go, oh wow, look at that, and then get on a festivals at the end of the year, which we've just come into the end of summer here now, where there's still a lot of festivals being played, and they're a great way again at showcasing the material of the act and wear them down just with ability.
Wear them down.
Wear them down with ability and great tracks, obviously. But you've got to. We might just punch out just some of these really cool patron questions and let the guys go.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you ever listened to any of our podcasts, but we had Mal Walker on a couple of weeks ago, who was, yes, do you know that name?
Yes, I do. Mal Walker was at my high school. He was the drummer for Guinness, the Tim and Kirk's school band.
Yeah.
The most unique band that ever existed. Mel was a jazz drummer. The bass player was like a Chris Squire from Yes aficionado, and they had a 30-year-old American pedal steel player, and they were doing like 4-part harmonies, doing like fusion rock, and Kirk was the singer. It was just bizarre. That was our school band. So yeah, it was pretty weird. But yeah, Mel Walker, I used to play rugby league with him. He was so I walk past his house, grab him, we walk up to Belrose for practice and go with him together to games. But went to his house one day, just got a drum kit. Literally overnight, he became amazing, like just incredible. Like he was. So yeah, he's a lovely bloke. So how is he?
Yeah, he was great, and he spoke about you, and he said he felt sorry for you that one night when you were packing up all the kit, and you had to pack it into the wagon, and then you had to do 2 runs or something to get to the next gig. Incredible.
I was the
The roadie.
Yeah. especially as we started, doing bigger shows, we started having lights and stuff. I to get a few extra bucks, I'd set up the lights. I do so just stuff that you
Do what
do.
you do, what you can do.
And do you know his brother as well, Ian?
Ian, like 4 years old or something, and he had a band that did a covers band, and John Farris was the drummer when he was, I think, 12. And they do things like nudist colonies. John,
Is that Top Cat?
yeah, Top Cat, yeah. And then when I first met John, he had like a roll of 20s like, sitting on his bedside table. It's like
What a
13.
dude.
Yeah, like I had my sister's helmet imp, and I drove him out to Hornsby to pick up a brand new Pearl drum kit, and he's like 13 with cash. I'm like, wow, this, yeah. But he's always been
Impressive.
amazing. John Farris, I don't know, I think he was born an amazing drummer, so it's
Bearing
been
their
amazing.
souls, literally. Yeah. Yeah. All right, B, you want to rip through a couple of quick patron questions, quick fire, and we'll
Yes, we've got this guy called John Jamin, and he is trying to get you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he lives in Cleveland as well. We've just had him on, but what he wants to know is, do you really want it? What, how do you feel about being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Because is it cool to be in, or is it? Because when I see like people like when was it? The Cure were in the other day, and they're a bit nonchalant about it, you know?
well,
So how do you feel? Oh,
he
go
could
on then.
he could win the lotto and he'd still be unhappy, Robert Smith.
I'd be honored. I mean, I think it's a bit of a funny area where there's so many acts that aren't rock and roll that are in there, but that's just the way it is. And there's and I can't be upset because there's a lot of bands that deserve probably more than INXS that have been around, that influenced us that haven't been nominated. So it's a funny one. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to be in it. I mean, I think it'd be a great thing to have on your resume. And I'm really thankful that people are out there really, banging the drum trying to get it happening. So I'd be flattered. I'd be happy.
We'd love you to be in it as well. It'd be wonderful to see you all up on stage together.
I voted for you last year, Gary, when I was in Cleveland. I went to the Hall of Fame and I put in INXS. There you go, mate.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Matt.
Petition out there that's probably has got the most amount of sort of signatures, I think, going around online. I think only second to the Guess Who, that Canadian band.
But Gary, you've got to know this. Okay, right. So it's a guy called Neil, and it's about his mom, really. Apparently, his mom, Joan McGullen, back then used to play tennis with your mother when they lived in the Belrose French's Forest. And my mum met my dad and they married and moved to Cronulla. He says, and every Christmas, Gary's mum used to send us a card. And he said, I remember asking about it. And he said that mum told me the tennis story and said that their son Gary played for the band INXS. Mum is long gone, but I have no idea what happened to the Christmas cards. But that's my little claim to fame, even though she couldn't even pronounce INXS.
My mum probably couldn't
Inks.
even play, my mum couldn't even play tennis very well. So
Ah,
that's a
no.
lovely story. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
cute.
my mum passed 13 years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
good to hear stories about your
Your
parents.
mom, yeah.
Um, Now, B, I've got one question, final question for Gary, and you might have a personal question as well. But the biggest thing I was curious to know about Gary, is there anything that INXS 50, in 2 years' time is going to be celebrated or acknowledged, or anything in the arsenal that you can hint towards or allowed to hint about?
I have no idea.
No.
Honestly, that's the first time I've even thought about the 50-year thing. Because yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'm sure there'll be something. I mean, we're just concentrating on the album releases, and
Mm.
we're just doing finally doing some cool merchandising stuff, which we've surprisingly we haven't really been on top of more in the past. But yeah, it's just we're just doing what we can to keep the brand alive and the music alive. So I think yeah, I'm sure there'll be something going on.
Well, if I had my way, I think there's definitely an opportunity there where I may have mentioned this one time before, but I think that INXS would be capable of having a one-time gig at the MCG with a bunch of Australian support acts and vocalists coming in, and having it as a one-day opportunity to say goodbye properly versus saying goodbye in Perth in 2012. Just my opinion. and I think you would
And
sell it
many
out. I
others.
think it would be a January sort of Australia Day type thing where you could sell at the MCG. You could get the best of all the Australian bands. I think there's a lot of goodwill, particularly amongst the bands influenced in Australia, or even the bands that just, even at the time in the '90s, were doing their own thing as young bands do. But media wise, I get INXS Google alerts, and I'm proud that Billy Corgan comes to Australia last month and plays "Don't Change," for you guys, and has a story about it and wants to play it. And Cav Temperley at the 2021 Grand Final plays Kick with Eskimo Joe, and Tim Rogers, if you go online and talk about the fallout with Michael and a few different things, speaks so beautifully about the negativity of the Australian media giving INXS a hard time in the '90s, saying they're the ones who are all praising them now, but don't forget who you are when you came out and you were that negative at the time. And there's a lot of goodwill amongst Australian bands and artists and commentariat and things at the moment where I think it'd be a great celebration of Australian music to have some artists come up, sing, support, whatever, and a great, almost Australian made, 40, 45, 40 years later, send off for the band. Just my view, just my opinion, just my drunken email rage. I think I've sent out a few times, but food for thought, Garry. Never, if you hear the idea, just claim it as your own.
Well, it's a great idea. I mean, look at me. I'm any key, any time. That's me. I'm there to play. So it's the other guys in many ways. And Andrew's out playing.
Yeah.
I'm out. If Toby and I could be out playing every day, we would be. So I think it's just a matter of having a chat, and if it becomes to be, I'd be really happy about it. But and you talked about people. I mean, even today, the kid Leroy did "Never Tear Us Apart."
Yes.
Last year, I've been in touch with him.
He's number 3 in the charts, by the way.
Yeah, he's number 3. It's ironic because I've actually thanked him for doing that, and he got back to me on social media, and I reached out. He's because he lives in the Palisades area, so I was worried about the fire. So we've been going back and forth about that. He's fine, but they got affected. Everyone got evacuated. But he's a good kid. Yeah, he's a good guy. So again, it's people carrying the torch for INXS. So if the album wasn't number 1 right now, I'd be saying, well, 2 years time. But it's been in the charts for 611 weeks.
Yeah,
and it's been in the charts for 11 years. So I think I'd be into it. I'll just say that.
And Garry, there's about at least five regular INXS tribute bands that play every weekend in Australia, never mind in other countries. So we want to hear the music. We want to listen to the tribute bands. We want to see you come back.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's it. That is the ironic thing, is that you're right. I was surprised that, as you saw from my Facebook post, I was kind of shocked that a member of our own band was doing it. But it's funny because then I wrote my thing on Facebook, and then a lot of the people that wrote messages back to me were like, "Actually, I'm in an INXS cover band. Yeah, actually,
There's loads."
Yeah, but they're probably coming from an adoration point of view, not a commercial. Let me just go take all the cool IP ideas away.
That's exactly right. I mean, and
they love you.
Well, exactly. It's a tribute for a reason. It's called a tribute. So
we've just found one in Chile the other day. Got in contact, and one in Berlin.
Yeah,
Chile, and like South America in general, but Chile and Argentina are really huge. And I think they're really. A lot of our Ashenmoon fans are from Chile as well, and I just did a bass session for a guitar player from Chile. So it's interesting stuff.
Well, we're Team Ashenmoon at the moment, B, on the podcast. So we're going to be championing the cause and sort of plugging sort of the tickets, etc. There, that are still available for our listener base and things. I'll be coming to the Melbourne gig. I think B, you'll be going to the Brisbane gig.
As many as possible.
Yep. Absolutely. And I guess, Toby, for yourself, is anything for the listeners or the fans that you could sort of mention about the gig, something you could sort of put out there as a not a selling point, but something that they could be ready to hear from the band?
I don't know, man. I think that it's pretty exciting that Garry and I have been working together for 5 or 6 years, and it's the first time we get to play in front of our family and friends and old fans as well. So I think it's just going to be like really kind of spiritual in a way. I think it's going to be really nice. It's going to be, as long as the rehearsals go well, I think we're going to be fine. The people working on stage for me in Melbourne are guys that have worked in my crew for the last 15 years on and off in different ways, and we're going to see old friends. It's going to be beers. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hell yeah, it's going to be great. So thank you guys for like getting us on and championing live rock and roll. Appreciate it.
Do you want to borrow the skateboard and come on stage on the skateboard?
I think Tim might want that. But,
yeah, we'll give that to Tim.
I've got my old 80s Gator board, signed Gator board. It's like on the wall at the studio. That's about as far as it goes. Last time I tried to ride a skateboard, I got skateboards for my kids, and I tried to ride my old Gator board, end up at the bottom of the pool. And
All right. Now, do you want to, Toby, read out just the dates again for those listeners who are probably hearing this sort of, as the record, because we've still got, I think, probably 3 weeks till you're here. So between the 5th and the 8th of March, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct. We're doing March the 5th at Lefty's Music Hall, which I heard is a great venue. You can actually stand behind the stage, I understand. Which
in Brisbane, that's right, yeah.
And then on the 7th, we're playing in the Memo Music Hall in Melbourne, which I'm really excited to play in St Kilda. I never played there before. I got a buddy of mine and his daughter, they won The Voice. And they're going to be opening up for us. They're the very first act, and then we have a really cool band opening up after them as well, which is great. Okay. And then Sydney at Wayward's, which is a Young Henry's pub. So there's going to be lots of beer in Sydney. So on the 8th of March, Wayward's, and then we're going to announce our secret show, which is not so secret, on the 9th in Sydney, which is going to be at the Rooftop at the Glenmore Hotel. In the evening from 4 till 6, it's going to be a meet and greet. We're going to have some beers. It's going to be great.
Fantastic.
And Garry, will you get a rugby game in when you're here, or do you have to fly back out quick?
As a incredibly bad timing, Manly are playing their opening round in competition with our gig in Sydney. So they're playing on that same night at Four Pines in Brookvale.
Right.
So
right.
I missed the opening round. They missed coming because I'm still I had a coffee with Anthony Seibold recently, and he was in LA, and I hung out with all the Manly guys obviously last year, and I'm in constant touch with DCE, the captain. So it's a real bummer, but I'm going to I've been invited to their new complex while I'm there, so I'll go and say good day, and hopefully maybe they can come along to the rooftop gig.
Awesome.
Manly players and Ashenmoon.
There we go.
Gotta
go. Well, on behalf of B and I, we really thank you for jumping on. Obviously, we know we started this podcast, I think, when it was light outside your right-hand side window there, Garry. I think it was early evening light. Now it's gone dark and pitch black. In Vegas, it's always dark in Vegas, isn't it, Toby?
I'm going to go off to work in a minute, so yeah.
Right.
Look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you for coming on, guys. Have a nice night.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Garry.
See you guys. All right, mate. Have a good gig.
Thanks, mate.
This is the Dutchie, and you've been listening to INXS Access All Areas with Hayden and B.